just spending the time. You know, we only have a limited amount of time on this planet. But I think your investment today is going to be worthwhile. Not only this community, but America needs a good story. In fact, it needs a hero story, and that's what we've got. The problem with this story is the tragedy that it took to occur. We've got a wonderful, wonderful police officer named Jesse Madsen. And Jesse Madsen served 3 tours of duty serving this country in Afghanistan. But that's not where his devotion stopped. It's where it began. As a young man, he always wanted to help make things better. I didn't have the opportunity to meet him, but every officer, and I'm close with law enforcement, I think Chief Dugan will tell you that, every officer I've talked to said when they needed the man, when they needed the person, I should say today, there was one name that always came to the top of the list. That was Jesse's. And I passed out, before the press conference began, his police department, Tampa Police Department commendation history. Look at that history, and you're going to find, as the last entry, the most tragic. He got the Medal of Honor. But before he got the Medal of Honor, I just was looking through it. It's amazing. Life-saving awards. How many of those he got? How many people he saved before he saved the last one? And I believe I've made it very clear, Ms. Ruiz has stepped forward. She wanted to be heard today, and I'm going to let her talk. She's a woman with children of her own, a single parent, and she realizes the sacrifice that he made because she saw it up close and personal. But for this officer's bravery, but for his heroism, she would be the person who wouldn't be here today, rather than Officer Madsen. So I wanted to be clear that today, for those of you that don't know, when you bring a sovereign in, and people say, well, Steve, Yared, why are you suing the sovereign? The Department of Transportation, why is your firm taking that on? We've got the best lawyers, I think, around. And the reason we're taking it on is because we're required to. There are certain things in the law called non-delegable acts, non-delegable areas. So, too, is the safety of our highways. And the Department of Transportation is charged with a non-delegable duty to make our highways safe. What they frequently do, and they've done in this case, no criticism, just a fact of life, they hired Transcore LLC. That's a out-of-state corporation, LLC, excuse me. That's an out-of-state corporation, and they specialize in what's at the core of this case. The gravamen of this case is, and it's in the complaint, when you sue a public entity like the state of Florida, in this case the Department of Transportation, there's a 6-month notice requirement. That notice requirement expired in the last couple of weeks. So today we filed in the Circuit Court for Hillsborough County, the 13th Circuit, a complaint. I won't walk you through the complaint as I would a law class, but I will tell you, generally speaking, that he had 3 children, Carter, Kellen, and Kenley, all tender-age children, all below 18 at the time of this occurrence. And they're going to be going through their lives without a father. Not just without a father, but without a heroic father. Not just without a heroic father, but a father that gave them nurture, guidance, companionship, and gave them everything every child should get in this country. Well, anywhere. A great dad. She had her best friend and a great husband. They were married and lived a wonderful storybook life. Did they have bumps in the road? Who doesn't? Tell me, who doesn't? I guess divorced people. I don't know. But anyway, just wanted to explain that Urali's going to be here, Miss Ruiz, and I've already told you a little bit about that. Just wanted to explain where's the responsibility? Okay, first of all, this is Yared on Life. Too many times in today's society, wrongdoers want to do this. That's what we've got. I see it at this conference table day in, day out. Oh, it's a terrible thing, but we didn't do anything wrong. Well, guess what? This wasn't an accident. They created a foreseeable zone of risk, and here's what's frightening for the people in Tampa Bay, Florida. Here's what's frightening. Everyone knows the Bush Boulevard exit, right? Out by South Florida. I was raised here. Everybody knows that exit. What I didn't know, and what you may be interested in, And I have my complaint, which is marked up. Let me get to that. This particular, it's hard, I didn't believe it when I read it. I had to read it twice. This particular exit ramp from January 2020 until February 2021, a year and a month, okay? That alone, in that period alone, there were 5 incidents involving wrong-way drivers at that exit ramp alone. And you've heard about all the other wrong-way drivers, but I couldn't believe it. At what, that one exit ramp, they had that many wrong-way drivers. And you know what happened in those cases? You wouldn't be here. Nothing. Because the system that this third party was designing and putting in and implementing was supposed to do one thing. It was supposed to alert wrong-way drivers and the presence of wrong-way drivers. One, to alert the driver so that he or she knew they were going the wrong direction, and some fatality or something just as bad, maiming of an innocent family, tourists, residents, anyone. Wife, children, mother, father, cop, pick one. Somebody was going to get in trouble, because when 2 vehicles are traveling at that rate of speed, bad things happen when they have head-on collisions. Okay? So, what happened this time, the 6th time? The system didn't work. It never activated. And someone is going to be held responsible. I would imagine that we're going to find exactly why it didn't work, why exactly it wasn't maintained the way it should have been, because that would have been a fail-safe for the wrong-way driver. Okay, well, you know, yeah, this wrong-way driver may not have paid any attention, no matter how many signs you put out there, no matter how. That's what we hear too often now, right? These mass shootings. Well, you can't stop a madman from killing people. Well, I think you can do certain things, and thankfully the Congress at least has taken some steps to do certain things. Well, that's what we're trying to do, take steps to do certain things. This would not only have alerted the wrong-way driver and presumably stopped his driving in the wrong direction, it would have alerted people like Chief Dugan, law enforcement, Chad Chronister, the sheriff's office. And more importantly, who else would it have alerted? Y'all have been on the interstate, every one of you. It would have alerted everyone on the interstate through the signage we've been able, through technology, to employ, that a wrong-way driver was coming. Take care, a wrong-way driver's coming. 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, something real bad. It would have given motorists a chance. That chance was not afforded. And what happened? What prevented it? Certainly the people that were supposed to prevent it didn't do anything to help. Did things to hurt by failing to discharge their duty. They created a zone of risk that was as foreseeable as this sun going down today. By the way, that device that they have was equipped with radar for the express purpose of detecting wrong-way drivers. Some of y'all, and I don't think there's anybody in the room, probably old enough, maybe one, that remembers the Skyway bridge. Everybody talked about this horrible pilot that went out in a storm and he hit this bridge and it was all his fault. Well, everyone knows now he got exonerated. What everyone else knows now is what happened that day? They didn't have radar on the Skyway bridge. So when the ship's radar was occluded with the rain, there was no bridge radar to back it up. This radar was good enough to back anything up as a first line of defense and the last line of defense. For whatever reason, it did not activate. Let the wrongdoers come forward and tell us it did. We've got a graveyard that says it didn't. I want to talk about a couple of other things that I think are important, and hopefully this will get your attention as much as anything else. When we take cases, we take them, God bless us, we could not be blessed with a better client than this one and her family. I hope she's got the right team to do 2 things. And that's what, you know, I don't like lawyer jokes. I don't like them because they're not well put to me. You know, lawyers wrote our Constitution when doctors were using leeches to treat patients. So I have a great high regard for our profession. But too much of the time we're looked as ambulance chasers, advertising merchants, and just want to make a buck. And first of all, I don't need the money, and neither does the firm. We don't take cases because of the money. We take cases like hers to give her justice and her family justice. But more importantly, we take cases like this so I don't have another client sitting where she's sitting tomorrow. So I don't have another group of children, young children, that are going to go through life, through graduations from school, through marriages, through the birth of their children, the joy of being grandparents. Those are all gone. Not only did he lose everything he had that day, he lost everything that was going to be. And that just is not the way we got to do it in America. So our efforts are two-pronged. One, to get justice for the family, but two, to help you, every one of you. Because every single one of you going to another news story, going to another news conference, and all the people that listen to this broadcast, and I hope there's a bunch, need to understand it could happen to you. That's why it's important we have change. I think that I've pretty much covered everything except the last thing. And I don't have to say anything about it, because I imagine every single one of you has a mother, or had a mother. If you're unfortunate and lost a mother like I did, death takes us all, right? But if you had a family and it had this kind of tragedy, how would it affect you? How would it affect you? What kind of loss do you think this is? The loss of a cop? The loss of a husband? The loss of a father? No. Mm-mm. It's a kind of tragedy that breaks people's hearts. And when that happens, I can tell you, no matter how good the lawyers are or the law firm, there's no prosthesis for a broken heart. Haven't found one yet. Is Ms. Rose here yet? Yes. Okay. At this point, before I close, and I'm done with my comments, and I appreciate your patience, but at this point, I'd like to introduce someone I've only talked to by the phone. Could you bring her in, please? Hello, Rose. I'm Steve Hill. So nice to meet you. Please sit beside me. I feel like a thorn between two roses. Okay. I've told you the backdrop. I've told you the background. She's come forward, and believe me, she's not comfortable. She emoted quite a bit when we talked on the phone call. And I asked her, she was at her own doctor's appointment, and cut that short so she could appear here. So I want her in her own words, and you know I don't usually ask the client to talk. It's just too much for them. But if you don't mind, will you just tell them what this officer's bravery and his heroic act did in terms of impacting your life and your children? And I'm sure they're going to listen to you.
Sorry.
It's okay. Take a deep breath. They're all just like us, I promise.
Well, I mean, it's a very hard subject to talk about. You know, the day that this happened, it was my daughter's birthday, which everybody already know. It was on March 9th.
It's okay.
This is something that I know has affected her in so many different levels, because she lost a husband. And because of what he did that night, I'm still here. My children still have me. But it's a very difficult subject, because it has affected me too in a way that I don't drive at night. The road, like, I get scared all the time.
The defendants don't have to worry. This isn't going to happen in court, I promise you. But you go ahead and you tell them from your heart what.
I honestly don't understand what was in Jesse's mind that night that did what he did. I was driving. I mean, you know, sometimes when you drive on the road, you're just like looking at the road and you're just looking straight ahead, and you don't really looking in the back until you know, I'm listening to music, and then I'm looking in the mirror, and I see Jesse's vehicle. I didn't know it was him because I don't know Jesse, but it was a police vehicle behind me. And everything happened so fast. I didn't see the car in front of me. I just saw Jesse doing what he did. And it was an image that is still in my, it still's with me. Sorry.
Tranquilamente. Tranquilamente.
And I just,
I'll make it easier for you. In other words, he drove in front of you to save your life. He gave his.
correct.
And it's had a pretty big impact on you?
Yes, it did. I don't think, I mean, I don't see, I've never met anyone, I mean, doing the things, you know, the things that Jesse did that night. Normally someone would have just drive away, and I would have been the one losing my life, and my children would have lost me that day. But Jesse, you know, he did what he did because that was something that he did for so many years, was helping people, and that was his duty, and he did it. He saved my life. He saved the life of my children.
That's enough. That's enough. So y'all get the impact emotionally, but I can't bring this kind of impact into a courtroom because you don't need to have these emotions. I can assure you they've had sympathy, more sympathy than they'll ever want. But now, everyone out there that listens that had anything to do with this occurrence better know one thing. We don't want sympathy, but we want justice, and we're coming. Thank you. Any questions?
So I know in the hours after the accident that the maintenance crews went out to look at the equipment that was there on the entrance ramp for the assault. What malfunctioned? What went wrong?
You know, I've known you for I don't know how many years, and that's a great question. And if I was able to answer it, you know I would. But unfortunately, we're going to go into litigation, and the people that know what went wrong are already defendants, and I promise you it'll come out. My hope is that Tampa Bay understands and embraces the story of a real live hero, because I think this story's going national, because it needs to go national. Cops sometimes do unbelievably heroic things, and this is one of them. That's all we've got on that. We can't comment on the specifics, and I appreciate the question.
Can you talk to us about the damages that you're seeking?
Sure. The damages are, under the law, there are two types of damages. There are economic damages, which would be, and people seem to embrace that so much easier. Let's say you've got a worker making $100 a week. The worker loses their ability to earn. It's $100 a week times however long they've lost the ability to earn. That's chump change. What's really invaluable is the enormity of the things that the law allows a jury to award money for. You see, money is the only mechanism, and by the way, we're the only jury system left in the world. Me, I'm an extinct species. Trial lawyers are almost gone. But we got to remember, to make people equal to corporations and large, mammoth, powerful entities, we have to always remember what's engraved on the courthouse at the Supreme Court that's now being boycotted. Okay? You know what those words are? There's 4. Carved in stone. Equal justice under law. And for that, my friend, what we have are non-economic damages, because corporations cannot feel pain and suffering, anguish, loss of enjoyment of life, loss of a caregiver. They can't enjoy any of that. What they do enjoy are profits. And when profits overtake safety, there's a real problem in this country. So the answer to your question is the non-economic damages will be whatever amount of money the jury thinks should be awarded. Meaning, in my judgment, the greater the enormity of the loss, the greater the enormity of the award should be. Pretty simple. And to that guide, we only have the jury's judgment, which I think is absolutely superior to most things. 6 collective minds versus 1. We have the judge acting as oversight over the jury's duty. Then we have appellate courts. God knows those corporations love appellate courts. So we got appellate courts, and then, of course, you got Supreme Court of Florida. So there's a lot of hurdles for us to jump. We've jumped them all successfully many, many times. I'm not worried about that. But your question, the best answer is The amount of damages of economic pale compared to the amount of loss that's been incurred by not only this lady, but her 3 children. And there'll be a day of reckoning, I promise you.
Do you have any previous information about this company and the malfunctioning of this device?
We do, and I'd love to share it with you, but I'm going to share it over at the courthouse where we need it. This will be the only time we talk about this case until the verdict is rendered, and I promise you, I'll answer all your questions after that, but it's inappropriate for me to comment to the media about ongoing litigation, and as of just a few minutes ago, it's been filed, right? As of a few minutes ago, the complaint's been filed, so I've got to be quiet.
And timetable on this now before it goes before jury?
Well, you know, what was that old saying? Justice delayed is justice denied. I think the lady suffered long enough. We're not going to walk to the courthouse. We're going to run, and we're going to be on this case immediately. We've been on this case already. So
one of the goals you said was to make sure that there's not another client sitting next to you in a circumstance like this. At the end of this lawsuit, do you believe that there will be better equipment on the interstate to prevent this kind of accident in the future?
can I answer that 2 ways? I think there'll be working equipment on the interstates. I don't know if this equipment was inadequate or adequate, but I do know it wasn't working. So whatever it was when it was working has no relevance to what it was doing that night, which was nothing. So for information, you know what the new Skyway Bridge has on it? It has radar. You know what the new Skyway Bridge has on it? Because we insisted, they wanted to rebuild the old one without the bumpers and the fenders and all that. Now that bridge we've got out there is being used as a template for bridges construction all over the world. So to answer your question in a long-winded fashion, what we do here makes a difference or we wouldn't do it.
How does the sovereign immunity that you mentioned affect the possibility of collecting that award?
I'm saying that.
How does the sovereign immunity that you mentioned before potentially affect the ability to collect that award?
That's a great question. Great question. In some states, I practice around the country, but in some states, like California, for example, doesn't have a sovereign immunity limit. Florida, a little more conservative, has a sovereign immunity cap. It used to be $200,000. They've raised it to now $300,000. Let me give you a real close example. I won't use a policeman. Well, I can't use anybody because I think so much of them. So I have to use a policeman. A policeman acts out, does something that they shouldn't do. The sovereign immunity cap means that someone suing the sovereign, the state of Florida, can never recover more than $300,000 for attorney's fees, medical bills. Let's say the person's a quadriplegic and their medical bills are $10 million. Their medical bills, their lost wages, they were nuclear scientists. They made $2 million a year. Those damages, great. But for the old senior citizen, for the young kid who never had a job, those economic losses don't exist. So their only reprieve from otherwise totally hardship situations is to go to non-economic. You asked about non-economic damages. Those are capped along with those other items, medical bills, legal bills, etc. So what we're hoping is the private entity, which usually has a tremendous amount of assets or resources, most of all insurance coverage, they will stand responsible ultimately rather than the state of Florida, which is why we were very pleased to learn a private contractor was involved. Because had the state of Florida been involved only, you're looking at a $300,000 loss, a hero's sacrifice. By the way, you know, we've got this governor that likes to talk a lot. So I think maybe you should put that question to him. Why do we have sovereign immunity? Beats me.
Is that private corporation not acting as an agent of the state in this case?
I don't think that that's going to work. I don't think that's been tried before. It's an instrumentality of the state, but it has its own responsibility. You're asking me, can it be under cover of the state? A university is a great example. We had a case, my partner and I had a case against the University of Central Florida where they ran a 19-year-old athlete to death. Ran him to death. No question about it. Took him 25 minutes to die. He fell down 7 times and was told to get his A up 7 times. He died. We took it to a jury trial because they didn't offer a dime. We got a $10 million verdict against the University of Central Florida. And what happened was, excuse me, I've got a sinus infection. What happened was, we've got a $10 million judgment, which a jury wants to give, and we've got sovereign immunity. UCF ran, not walked, ran for the sovereign immunity cover and claimed sovereign immunity. In that case, the appellate court said, oh, no, no. When you have an athletic department operating under a university, the umbrella of the university, they get sovereign immunity. But here, unlike there, you've got a separate, very sophisticated corporation which has its own responsibilities. Does that make sense? So we had to sue the state of Florida in order to get to the private corporation. If that, I know it's a little convoluted, I apologize for that.
I'm not still sure if I'm clear on the aspect of being a subcontractor and whether or not.
They actually were an independent contractor, but that means we could call them a subcontractor because the state of Florida contracted with them.
Right.
I'll give you a good example. Let's say, and it's not, but let's say Buck Stadium was owned by the state of Florida, okay? And they hired a concessionaire to supply food to the fans. And the concessionaire supplied bad food that killed people. Not only made them food poison, sick, killed a few people. Okay, under that scenario, I can tell you the food concessionaire would stand alone. They couldn't hide behind the state of Florida because they simply owned the stadium.
But you would have to sue the state of Florida.
But we
to
have,
get
exactly,
to-
yeah,
Okay.
he's got it. In fact, you can join the firm right after this presentation. Anything else?
To be clear, the state of Florida is only gonna be on the hook, in a worst case scenario, for $300,000, this other company, TransCore.
You know, that's a great question too, because I'm not exactly ready to hang it up. I may try to change the law on that before I quit. You know, that's a pretty good idea. I think that equal protection under law may work even with the state of Florida and its highfalutin government employees. We'll see if it works.
I do have one more question.
Yes.
And I have to preface it by saying, and you know this, I mean absolutely never in my question any disrespect for the heroism of your husband.
Not toward him, maybe toward me.
I'm just letting you know. But his act, his decision, and Chief Dugan spoke of it when the investigation first started, was that it was his decision to lay his life on the line for other people.
Yes.
How does that potentially impact what it is that you're trying to do here, since whether there was a warning signal or not, as heroic as he was, he made the decision to drive in front of that oncoming car.
Well, I don't think he made a decision to drive into that oncoming car. I think he made a decision to save a person's life. And when we talk about law enforcement, if I've got a policeman involved in my situation, I want one that's willing to give his life for mine. So I don't look at it as he made a choice. I don't think in that split second where he decided to be a hero instead of a scared cop, I don't think that's a decision he made. I think that's a decision that was made for him. And you know why? She's sitting right next to me. Thank y'all for your time. Good luck. Thank you for covering it.
Thank you.
There's pictures up here, by the way, if you like them. They're all for you. This is his Medal of Honor that he got. You're welcome to look at it. These